I don't think we have Commissioner Compton. Not sure he had sent me an email earlier in the week that he would not be joining us. So we're going to go ahead. If y'all are agreeable, we can go ahead and get started. And I'll go ahead and call the agenda briefing to order for this May 29th, 2020 agenda briefing. And commissioners, if everybody has their agenda packet available, you do see that we will be meeting in the MAC Center. I've gone and checked it out. Staff's done a great job to get us prepared for Monday night to be at the MAC Center. So everything should work out well. We do have a one proclamation that we'll be reading, and we'll have the folks there to receive that proclamation. So with that, commissioners, we'll go ahead and move into the consent agenda. Take a look at the screen. So we'll look at consent agenda items 5A through 5D. 5A through 5D. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Any comments or questions on agenda items 5A through D? Looks like everybody's okay with that, so we'll move on. Consent items 5E through H. 5E through H. Any comments or questions?
Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
Just on 5G, again, just asking clarification that this is only to certify that the applications the clerk is bringing forward are 100% complete. This in no way assumes approval of any of those parcels to be annexed. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correct?
That is correct, but Ms. Miller, could you just chime in on that, please?
Yes, that's correct. We are just certifying that the applications are whole and all the information is correct and all the owners have signed. Any voting or removing or approving would be done at the public hearing on the 15th.
All right, thank you.
Hey, Jen, you might want to check your volume. You're breaking up and fading out. Commissioner, so again, any additional questions? Thank you, Commissioner Qualls. Any additional comments or questions on consent items 5E through H? Hearing none, we'll move on. Commissioners, take a look at consent items 5I through 5L. 5I through 5L. Any comments or questions?
Mayor, can I ask? Yes.
Yes.
On 5I, is there any financial consideration for that temporary easement?
Commissioner Qualls, no, there's not. This is a request from Real Code Development Corporation for easements. But to answer your question, no, there would not be any consideration.
Is that a little atypical? I mean, when we're asking for a construction easement across someone's property, don't we compensate them typically?
We do, and we could make that request of them if the board would like.
I mean, it's the first time that we're kind of seeing this, so I wasn't sure if this is typical. Have we done this in the past at no cost?
Sharon, can I address that? You don't mind?
Absolutely, thank you.
So, Commissioner Qualls, what this is they are working on a new water line that will be dedicated to the town. So what we're really trying to do is just to make sure that in the future, when this property, which is the old West Branch over there off Faith Road, when this property potentially is got sold or whatever it happens to be, that there's an easement in place. So it's kind of a chicken and an egg type thing. I hate to say it that way, but it really is. All this is doing is establishing an easement on a water line that will be our water line. So they're running a line that will be taking over. It'll be a public line. That makes sense?
Sure.
And
thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioners, bear with me. I'm just texting with Jeff. We do have Bobby and Barbara listening in. I'm just wanting to clarify if they have any questions, if they have the ability to ask questions.
They're good.
They are good? Okay, Jeff. Just keep me posted so we don't move without their ability to ask questions. So thank you, Commissioner Qualls, for those questions. Any additional comments or questions for consent item 5I through 5L? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on. Yes, I'm sorry. Go back, please.
Commissioner Whittington has a question.
Commissioner Whittington, yes.
My question is, could we not just indicate Realco will not receive any compensation or something like that for this, if, because, considering who we're dealing with?
Sharon, you want to chime in on that?
Yes, and it is in the easement document, and we could do an adjustment to the agenda on Monday, just to indicate there's no consideration that's going to be paid.
Okay, thank you.
Would that alleviate, you think, everyone's concern, Commissioner Qualls, Commissioner Whittington?
It does mine.
I think it's just a little more transparent, yes.
Okay, thank y'all for bringing that up. We'll move on then from the consent agenda. We might have one other to the regular agenda. This will be our first public hearing pretty much post-COVID lockdown. This is a public hearing and adoption of the FY 2020-21 budget. Ms. Hockett or Mr. Heeman, who am I calling on?
I'll be doing this one, Mayor.
All right, Mr. Heeman.
I believe we've got the same slides that you've seen previously. This is the manager's recommended budget. Okay. Tax rate remaining at 58 cents per 100 proposed. No use of fund balance, 2% merit increase. This is a general fund budget decrease of 6.21%. It does include 7 new general fund positions. And as I noted earlier, those are all public safety and sanitation related. I believe there's a stormwater as well. 2 new utility fund positions, no monthly increase in water sewer rates. And I previously mentioned that it looks like with our rate study that just came in that we'll be able to hold those rates for several years to come. 1 new stormwater position and no increase in stormwater fees. Okay. The board directed funding that's in this budget is the East-West Connector Phase 2 for preliminary design and Liberty Park Phase 2 design. As I mentioned earlier, that may be Phase 2A and a Phase 2B. We will discuss that with the board as we dig further into that. It also includes the Lane Tree 115 intersection improvements at $112,000. Next slide. As you can see, utility funds up slightly. That is because of growth. Stormwater fund up slightly as well. PAL bill, while we see it going up now, that is going to go down in years to come. So just keep that in mind. And utility reserve is at about 65%. Next slide, please. So we also have in here Brawley School road widening, East-West Connector design, and the Chrissy Grant design. And our big utility project is that Wiggins Road pump station that will really give us some capacity to pull things off of Reed Creek. Okay. We did come into this with projected sales tax revenue down 20% and property tax collection rate down from 99.2 to 98%. This does address the commissioner's goals coming out of your retreat and moves Mooresville forward. Next slide. I did want to point out that the continuum funds are held in escrow until liabilities are resolved. We're still working through liabilities associated with retirement, and a few other items. And also, we have promised that we'll do a mid-year assessment and see where we are. This is a roller coaster ride this year, and I think everybody on the board understands that. And we're going to have to reassess mid-year and see where we are. There may be an opportunity to add some other projects in, and hopefully we won't have to make any further cuts. We are still working on a proposed public safety bond that you are aware of. So next slide, please. Any other questions on the budget proposed?
Any comments or questions for Mr. Heeman? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item 6B. This is a public hearing to consider a rezoning request from Magnolia Properties Group to rezone properties located at 171, 179, and 185 Williamson Road. Mr. Wilson.
Yes, sir. Good morning. This property, there are 3 properties, and jump to the next slide, please. This is a straight up rezoning from R2 to CMX. As you can see, everything in the area is CMX. Planning board did request unanimously to approve this rezoning in their March meeting. This is one of the 2 that the planning board had reviewed in March prior to the COVID-19 shutting everything down. I wanted to also make a note during our actual meeting on Monday, we plan on having Craig Culberson present these in case there are other questions regarding background as he has seen these projects through.
Any comments or questions for Mr. Wilson or Mr. Culberson?
Mayor, I have one.
Commissioner West and then Commissioner Qualls.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Wilson, do we have, this is a straight up rezoning. Do we have any idea as to exactly what they perhaps may put in there?
Yes, sir. After this submittal, they did come through with a conditional rezoning request that will follow this one up, assuming this gets approved. And I don't know if Craig, you're on here this morning, you want to jump into specifics about what they're looking at?
Okay, Commissioner West, their proposed site plan has got 3 buildings on it. 2 of them, ones that I guess would be to the north looking are mixed use building, commercial, and office. There is also on the plan the proposal for a fast food restaurant. And the fast food restaurant is what you will be seeing at your June 15th meeting, because the conditional would require a drive-through. My recollection is that this is a relocation of a business that's moving from 150 due to the widening.
Thank you.
Mr. Qualls?
Sure. That was first part of my question was, is there a plan? Why are they not bringing a plan forward with this rezoning right now?
Mr. Qualls, we discussed that with them. They wanted to go ahead and try to move forward with an entitlement. And, this is literally the donut hole that's left. The properties are, completely surrounded with CMX uses. And the land use plan, does support the rezoning to CMX. But basically they just wanted to move forward with the entitlement question.
So then some of my concerns with this is, as we've all continue to watch DOT delay projects. I mean, this is at an intersection where we have a very high crash rate. Not seeing a plan, not knowing road improvements. I'm very concerned about. Obviously, yes, it's CMX is the right use, but not knowing what the road improvements are going to be there. And if they're relying on DOT for those road improvements or traffic light or anything, it's going to be years before we see that. This is already a corridor that is, we identified, obviously, we started looking at this widening project, 7-8 years ago. And, to not have that widened and not have a traffic light there and not see a plan, we're kind of shooting in the dark here for a request. So, this road backs up every Friday from 150 to Brawley School Road. And like I said, a lot of crashes there, and not seeing the road improvements that they've proposed, if any, is a grave concern. That's all I got to say.
Well, if I could, the request that you'll be seeing at your June 15th meeting, it is a conditional request. It does include the plan and the TIA mitigations. You will have an opportunity to see all of those things at the mid-month meeting when the conditional request comes forward.
Any other comments or questions for Mr. Culberson? Hearing none, we'll move on. Regular agenda 6C is follow-up to this, which is a conditional rezoning. No, it's not. I'm sorry. Conditional rezoning request from Nest Communities for properties located at Brawley School Road. Mr. Wilson.
Yes, sir. So again, this is the second item we had at March Planning Board. This is for 17 acres, the corner of Brawley School and Forest Lake, to put in 120 multifamily units, 8 of which are live-work units. This is more townhouse development style over here. And this is a conditional rezoning request, currently R2. And they're requesting CMXC. And if you could go to the next slide, please. We have the plan for this. Planning Board did recommend unanimous denial of this project during their March 12th meeting. The property is in a node that the future land use map does speak on commercial uses in our nodes, and this does not have those uses. If this property was to be approved, so staff recommended denial, Planning Board recommended denial, but if the board did feel that this should be approved, please note that the future land use would also need to change both the underlying property designation to neighborhood residential, and as well as removing the neighborhoods in our node property.
Any comments or questions for Mr. Wilson?
I'll save my comments for Monday.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Wilson. We'll move on to agenda item 6D. This is a consideration for rezoning request. Mr. Wilson.
Yes, sir. So this is, you have referred to it. It's on the, I guess, along Faith Road, just over 33 acres. The proposal is for 77 single-family home lots. This is a conditional rezoning request from R2 to R3 conditions. And if you go to the next slide, please, we do have the plan this as well. The Planning Board did recommend unanimous approval of this during their May meeting. And these are age-targeted homes, but not age-restricted.
Comments or questions for Mr. Wilson?
Yes, Mayor.
Yes, Commissioner Dingler.
Yeah, just from a safety aspect, I mean, this is on that downward slope coming down Faith Road. I mean, just from a safety point, is it going to be pretty safe to get out of this thing? Just where the location and the exits and entrances to it.
Now, I'll ask Craig to address. They did have to do.
Commissioner Dingler, part of the review of this plan, it did have a traffic impact analysis done. If you see there's 2 entrances, and the entrance to the lower portion of the screen looking at this, you notice there's a pocket park there. There's not lots. And there is a line there. The DOT has required a 400-foot sight distance coming down that hill. As you said, it's noted on the plan that will need to remain not treed, nothing there that's going to restrict a driver's view. And the DOT has, like I said, during the process of the TIA and the driveway permit, commented and approved the locations that you see on this plan.
I appreciate that. I knew it had probably been addressed, but it's just an awkward place right there. So, but I appreciate that as long as it has been looked at.
Any other comments or questions, commissioners?
Mayor, I have one.
Commissioner West?
Thank you. Mr. Young, in looking at this TIA for this, and I'm not sure if it required it, but was Faith Road and 115 looked at in terms of impact, or was that not required?
Commissioner West, I do not believe it was required on this particular one. You were the one there. I believe they're under the TIA threshold, but let me look at that. Actually, not sure at the moment. Would give me. I'll be able to address that for you and get back with you. I'll need to look at it and see. If I remember correctly, it was not required to be looked at, and a lot of the improvements obviously we're doing in 115 and Faith had addressed potential growth in this area already. So I suspect that this is tied into that.
Thank you.
Mr. Young, while you're on that topic of 115 and Faith, could you just clarify for everyone what the status is on that intersection improvement?
Sure. So the contractor has obviously has not been out there. That by his own volition has not been out there. We have actually sent them a couple of letters to this point, just notifying them that there's no reason why they shouldn't be there. They need to get out and get their work done. He's assured us he's going to be back on the site by June 15th. I'm working with the NCDOT on that one as well to make sure that we're doing everything appropriate to get the contractor in there and get the job wrapped up. But again, all indications they will be finished. It's supposed to be done by the end of this year. I think it's December, late December, if I remember correctly, on a finish time on that particular project. But again, we're expecting the contractor to be back out there sometime in June.
Okay. Just have all the utilities been relocated?
All utilities are relocated. There's actually nothing delaying the project other than the contractor not being on site.
Okay. Commissioners, any other comments or questions regarding this agenda item? Thank you, Mr. Young. Commissioners, we'll move on to agenda item 6E. This is a conditional rezoning request from Realco for Faith and Shears Road. Mr. Wilson?
Yes, sir. This is a 22-acre parcel. Again, this is 77 single-family home lots. So we do have 277 single-family home lots on this agenda, which I know is odd, but is correct. This is a conditional rezoning from R2 to RMXC. Go to the next slide, please. There's a plan with this press as the conditional. Planning board did recommend unanimous approval of this rezoning in the May 21st meeting. Happy to answer any questions.
Comments or questions for Mr. Wilson?
Mayor, I have one.
Commissioner West?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Wilson, just double check. I know you reached out to Mr. Blackwelder. I believe we've addressed his concerns on this. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioners, any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item 6F, and this is to consider rezoning request in the town of Mooresville for the property located at 21 and Wilson, West Wilson. Mr. Wilson.
Yes, sir. So as you just mentioned, this is the town of Mooresville property. It's just over 12 acres, corner of West Wilson and 21. The request has come in to go from R3 to CMX. This is a straight rezoning, so no site plan with this. As you can see, all the properties to the north, actually south and west of this property are business and commercial in nature. Property to the east, R3, is the golf course. So that is the only real piece along this corridor that is not commercial. Planning board did recommend approval, although it was a 5-2 vote during the May 21st meeting for approval of this I will note that part of the widening, whenever it does happen, along 21, will take a good chunk of this, is anticipated to take a good chunk of this property, making development in the future.
Any comments or questions for Mr. Wilson? Sorry, Mr. Wilson, you were breaking up a little bit. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, sorry. No, this is the site for the future police department station. So I just wanted to make sure that which property we're looking at.
Okay. Commissioners, comments or questions? Okay. Commissioners, we'll move on to agenda item 6G. This is a conditional rezoning request from Nest Homes for properties located on Kennerly Avenue. Mr. Wilson?
Yes, sir. So this is a request for a townhome development. It is a conditional zoning. So it's just over 6 acres. It is currently zoned R2. They're requesting neighborhood mixed use with conditions for 41 townhome units. And if you see the red hatched area on the left-hand side of your screen, that's along Main Street. So that's business. So commercial, all running up and down Main Street. This is the first residential piece moving out. Go to the next slide, please. As it is a conditional request, this does have a plan that came with it. Planning board did recommend unanimous approval during the main meeting. Couple of items of note: if this rezoning is approved, staff is also recommending an amendment to the future land use designation to neighborhood residential. Current future land use designation is rural residential. I mean, as I mentioned, it butts right up to downtown Main Street commercial development. So this would be a better opportunity for some transition commercial to rural residential. We did have 6 citizens speak out during planning board against this project. There's a lot of concerns regarding the Gamble Forest property just further out Main Street from this, and the development in general, more so than this development specifically. But there were concerns about development in this part of town.
Any comments or questions for Mr. Wilson? Hearing none, we'll follow in these public hearings. We'll have the manager's report. Is there any new business the board would like to consider Monday night? Would you like to add to the agenda? Hearing none, from after that, we'll go into closed session. Ms. Crawford, will you be sending anything out regarding closed session?
Not at this time, no.
Okay. The commissioners, when we we will go into another room outside of the MAC Center, an adjoining room. It's where we'll be having dinner. Dinner's going to be served at 5 o'clock, starting at 5, and then we'll move. And that's where we'll be holding closed session, and then we'll go into the main room. Jen, what room is that? The Cedar room?
The Cedar and the Peddler.
Okay. So we will have a sign out front too to let the public know that there is a meeting happening in the MAC Center and to direct them there if they'd like. Does anybody have any questions about Monday night, about the setup and the meeting? Any comments or questions, any concerns? Okay, hearing none. Does anyone from staff, do you have anything you'd like to share with the board at this time? Any updates, any comments? Thank you, Miriam, for the census plug. Certainly work on that. Anybody else?
Yes, sir.
Okay, hearing none. Commissioners, go ahead and adjourn the agenda.
Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Commissioner Whittington.
Yes, Commissioner Whittington.
This is probably a dumb question, but am I supposed to bring my budget with me Monday night?
You can bring it with you if you have specific questions you'd like to ask Monday night during the public hearing.
I don't, but it's heavy, and I didn't want to bring it if I didn't have to.
Well, we'll make sure we have a copy available for you, so you don't need to bring yours in case you have anything
Thank you.
to reference. Yes, ma'am. Any other comments or questions before we adjourn? Commissioners, let's hope the rain doesn't stick around. Y'all have a great weekend. We're going to go ahead and adjourn, and we'll see you Monday night.